The next one comes from Richard Taylor. He's over here. You can see him. Should say, partly just to fill the time, on the microphone makes its way over, we do have Richard and also Anthony who are filming the event. They are only filming us lot on the stage, so don't worry, no one's face is going to be plastered all over YouTube in the morning. Richard Taylor.
Should the UK offer Edward Snowden asylum, a medal, a fair trial?
Thank you, Richard. Multiple choice then. We will start with Julian Hubbard.
I think he should be offered asylum. I think it was an astonishing thing which he did. It's a great shame that he felt he had to go through that route rather than there being proper due process within the US. But I think to leave him sort of stranded in Russia is not the best outcome at all. And it's really amazing what we learned from Snowden. I spent about a year working on a very detailed committee looking at the communications data bills, to do this charge as it became called. And we were told all sorts of things, which we then learned from Snowden, were not remotely accurate. That we were, as parliamentarians, we were lied to by the security services and the police about what could happen. But when that came out, it was really terrifying how little reaction there was in the UK Parliament. We had one debate, the debate which I secured with cross-party support, one debate only. Huge number of people resisting, disagreeing. People not wanting to talk about what we come across. In Germany there's been lots of discussion, in the US there's been lots of discussion. But here, uniquely, there's been very, very little. I don't know why there's, in Germany they have the experience of the Stasi, America has more experience of the FBI going on, we have experience of James Bond. We have all James Bond. But in fact, there have been huge ones. And in fact, the government lost the first case ever in front of the IPT, the tribunal which deals with intelligence matters, where they ruled that, in fact, the regime that we had was not lawful. It's been corrected, so it's now technically lawful. But it was ruled to be not lawful. Now, I think we have to have a role for the security agencies. They do play a very important role in keeping us safe. But they have to stick within the law. There has to be support for proper oversight. And there has to be support for whistleblowers internally, so we wouldn't have to force somebody like Snowden to go through the steps he's had to go through.
So one tick for asylum so far. Let's go to Daniel Session.
Well, I'm not quite so keen on Snowden as you are, Julian, because I think he did put a huge number of people at risk. But what he did, of course, reveal was that there were dreadful things going on, and that is the dilemma. And we absolutely do have to protect whistleblowers. This is almost on a completely different scale, isn't it? Which is why it's been such an extraordinary case, or why it's so very, very difficult to resolve. So I think it's a very hard one for people to deal with. And I find myself absolutely torn, because in principle I think it is, for an individual to make that decision, it's a very momentous decision to take. And it must have been a momentous decision for him to take, because not only do you put others at risk, he also put himself at huge risk. His whole life has been, of course, you could say, transformed because of it, and never be the same again. So in some ways you can say he was very brave, but you can also say he was very foolish. So it's a very, very hard one. And I think the biggest problem of all is what it showed, what it revealed. And we have to look very carefully at how we deal with that in future. But we also shouldn't understate the risks that we do face in the modern world. So it's a question of getting the balances right. I'm not sure that Richard's question is easily answerable, quite frankly. And I think that's probably why he finds himself in a state of limbo.
Jemima Fernando.
I actually think he's been incredibly brave, and we should stand up for people who've done that. Sorry. The reality is we are fortunate in this country to have whistleblowing legislation to protect the whistleblower. I think in the case of Snowden, we have uncovered atrocities going on that we would never have otherwise known about. So it sets the wheels of transparency in motion. It gives people the courage to come forward and talk about things that they know that are going on that we would not otherwise know about. So I think he's done very well. In answer to the question, I am torn between asylum. I don't think we need to go as far as a medal, but he has been incredibly brave.
And finally on this one, Rupert Reed.
Well, why not asylum and the medal? Julian, the only question I have for you is, why were you surprised that the spooks lied to you? That's what they do. That's what they do, and they've got far too much power, and they're dangerous. And I must say, I'm disturbed by Daniel's answer to the question. I'm afraid that when push comes to shove, Labour's instincts, like the Conservatives' instincts on these questions, always seem to be in the final analysis to plug for the deep state and to expose us all to ever-growing levels of surveillance. And I think we need to be extremely disturbed by what Snowden and others have revealed. We are in a situation now in a country like this and also in the US where in many ways the level of surveillance, the extent to which we are a police state is more than it was in Eastern Europe. The amount of stuff that they know about us, the amount of ways that they snoop upon us are stuff that the Stasi in many respects could only dream of. And yet we tolerate this. It's extremely disturbing. One reason I feel about this very strongly is because I have quite a lot of friends and colleagues in the Green Party, outside the Green Party, and other radical movements like the animal rights movement and so on, who have been spied upon and dealt with in most disturbing and appalling ways in some cases. My friend and colleague, Baroness Jenny Jones, is coming here in 10 days' time to support my campaign and speak for us in this election. Jenny is someone who has been labelled, according to secret police documents that were revealed, as a domestic extremist because of various demonstrations that she's taken part in. Now, of course, the great response to this is always, well, if you've got nothing to hide, then what are you afraid of? But let me tell you, there are people who do have something to hide. Journalists often have something to hide. Whistleblowers often have something to hide. Political activists often have something to hide. Right? This idea that you've got nothing to hide, then what are you afraid of, is completely wrong. And of course, it applies directly to Snowden himself. He had something to hide. Right? He had something, therefore, to be afraid of. Thankfully, he managed to keep his courage and reveal it all to us. The world's a better place for it.